"Don't touch him." The words sliced through the music like a blade. Every head in the ballroom turned. The billionaire stood at the center of the dance floor, eyes cold as glass, staring down at the waitress who still held his son's hand. Seconds earlier, the room had been alive, chandeliers glittering, violins swelling, laughter bouncing off marble walls. The Grand Harbour Charity Gala, the crown jewel of Charles Whitmore's empire. Now it was silent. The waitress froze, her fingers still lightly resting on the small, fragile hand of the boy in the wheelchair. The boy, Evan, looked terrified. She looked calm. Charles looked furious. He stepped closer. "I said, take your hands off my son." The woman slowly rose to her feet. "He just wanted to dance, sir." "Your staff," he snapped. "You serve drinks, not pity." The crowd murmured, pretending not to watch but unable to look away. Evan's voice cracked. "Dad, please!" "Enough!" Charles barked. A hush swallowed the room. The waitress's name tag caught the light. Lena. She drew a slow breath, fighting the tremor in her voice. "I wasn't giving him pity. I was giving him joy." Charles's jaw clenched. "Joy? You think my son needs you to give him that?" Then quieter, but sharper. "You're fired." No one moved. The band stopped. A champagne flute slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the marble. Security stepped forward. Evan shouted, "Dad, stop!" But Charles didn't flinch. He turned his back as the guards escorted Lena toward the door. That was the image the cameras caught. The billionaire's back. The crying boy and the waitress still holding her head high. Hours earlier, the same room had smelled of roses and money. Waiters glided across the floor, carrying crystal trays. Lena had moved among them quietly, efficient, invisible. She'd noticed the boy before anyone else did, while other children twirled under the chandelier. Evan sat alone in his wheelchair near the buffet table, tapping his fingers to the beat only he could hear. Lena had crouched beside him. "You like this song?" He nodded shyly. "Want to dance?" "I can't," she smiled. "Who said you need legs to dance?" She'd taken his hands, letting him guide her. Their fingers swayed gently in time. For a moment, he forgot the chair. He was leading. People had started to notice. Some smiled, others whispered. Then came the gasp, the phones, the attention, and then his father's voice. Now, outside the ballroom, Lena stood on the pavement, the cold night air pressing against her face. She took off her apron and folded it neatly. Even though her hands shook, a waiter followed her out. "Hey, that was rough. You okay?" She nodded, forcing a smile. "It's fine." He's protecting his image. "People like that. They don't see people like me." He hesitated. I saw the kid's face. He looked happy for the first time all night. Lena looked up at the glowing hotel windows. Somewhere up there the boy was probably crying. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Happiness scares men like that." Inside, the gala continued as if nothing had happened. But something inside Charles didn't settle. He tried to focus on speeches, donations, polite laughter. Yet his mind replayed the look in his son's eyes, joy turning to fear. After the guests left, he found Evan still awake in the car. "Don't sulk," Charles muttered. "You embarrassed yourself," Evan whispered. "She didn't mean harm. She crossed a line. She made me feel—" "Normal," Charles turned sharply. "You are normal. Then why won't you let anyone treat me that way?" The question hit like a punch. Charles said nothing. Outside the window, cameras flashed, reporters still circling after the gala. He straightened his tie, put on the practiced smile. He didn't notice the reflection of his son watching him. Disappointed, silent. Later that night, in the penthouse, the city lights spilled across the marble floors. Charles poured a drink and turned on the news. His own face filled the screen, but not for the reasons he wanted. A viral video titled, "Waitress Teaches Billionaire's Disabled Son to Dance," was exploding online. Millions of views, thousands of comments. She saw his soul when his father saw his status. That Woman just humbled a billionaire with kindness. The richest man in the room looked the poorest. Charles set his glass down, pulse rising. He watched the clip, the way Lena smiled, the way Evan laughed, the way he'd stormed in and shattered it. He slammed the laptop shut, but the sound of that laughter wouldn't leave his ears. For the first time in years, he couldn't sleep. Meanwhile, somewhere across the city, Lena sat on the edge of her small bed, scrolling through her cracked phone screen. The same video, the same comments, but she wasn't smiling. She worried she'd ruined her life, her job gone, her name online, her bills piling up. Then a new message appeared. From an unknown number. This is Charles Whitmore. We need to talk. She stared at the screen. The same man who humiliated her in front of hundreds wanted to talk. She locked the phone and whispered to herself, "Let's see what money sounds like when it apologizes." The message glowed on her cracked phone screen like a warning. This is Charles Whitmore. We need to talk. Lena stared at it for a long time. The man who'd humiliated her in front of hundreds now wanted her attention. She typed, erased, and typed again. Finally, about what? 3 dots blinked, then disappeared. Silence. She tossed the phone aside. Coward. But before she could close her eyes, it buzzed again. Meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m., Whitmore Tower. She laughed under her breath. Of course, his territory. Morning sunlight crept through her curtains. The world outside looked the same, but everything inside her had changed. She dressed simply, black slacks, white blouse, the same uniform that got her fired. Only this time, she didn't wear the name tag. When she reached Whitmore Tower, the guards at the front desk looked uncertain. Her face was everywhere. Screenshots, headlines, hashtags. Viral hero waitress. Millionaire humiliates staff at charity ball. The dance that broke the internet. Even they had probably watched it. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you," one said quietly. The elevator ride felt endless. 48 floors of silence. When the doors opened, the view hit her first. Glass walls, sky, and a city sprawling below. Then she saw him. Charles Whitmore stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the skyline like it owed him something. He turned slowly when she entered. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. Lena crossed her arms. "You didn't really give me a choice, did you?" He gestured toward a chair. "Please sit." "I'm fine standing," he nodded slightly. "You've become quite famous overnight," she smirked. "That's what happens when someone powerful tries to crush someone powerless." "People love that story," he exhaled through his nose. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He paused. "An apology." Lena blinked. "An apology?" "I overreacted. That night, I was protecting my son's dignity." Her laugh was sharp. "By stripping someone else's?" He frowned. "You don't understand the world I live in. I understand humiliation," she cut in. "You made sure of that." The words hung in the air like smoke. Charles looked down at his hands, hands that built empires. Signed checks, crushed competitors, but couldn't hold his son's happiness. He sighed. "Evan hasn't spoken to me since that night." Something softened in Lena's eyes. "He blames himself," Charles continued. "Says he ruined your life." "He didn't," she said quietly. "You did." He met her gaze, and for once didn't look like a man in control. "I want to make it right," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "With money?" "No," he said quickly. "Not just money," she smirked. "There's always a just," he hesitated, then opened a file on his desk. Inside were glossy plans, a new foundation logo, press release drafts, a tagline, "The Whitmore Inclusion Initiative." Lena scanned the papers. "So this is it. You want to turn guilt into branding." "That's not fair," he said. "What's fair is the video that showed people who you are," she shot back. "You fired me for showing kindness, and now you want to sponsor it?" Charles flinched at her words. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to do something useful with this mess. Lena studied him. For a moment she saw not arrogance, but exhaustion. The kind that comes from years of pretending to be untouchable. Useful, she repeated. You mean profitable? He didn't deny it. The tension broke when his phone buzzed. He answered automatically. Tell them to schedule the board call at 3. A pause. No, I don't care what they think. Another pause. I said 3, not 4. He hung up, realizing she was still watching him. She tilted her head. And that's why you'll never get it. What? People don't need your money. They need your humanity. Charles blinked, unsure how to respond. Then, almost whispering, he said, Evan wants to see you. Lena froze. He asked for you, he continued. Said you're the only person who ever looked at him like he wasn't broken. For the first time since entering the tower, her voice faltered. And what do you want, Mr. Whitmore? He looked away. To understand what that means. Later that afternoon she found herself standing in front of a grand penthouse door. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished surface. When the door opened, Evan's face lit up. Lena! He wheeled forward, eyes bright. I knew you'd come. She knelt beside him. You okay, champ? He nodded. Dad's been weird since that night. Keeps talking about feelings. She laughed softly. That's progress. Charles appeared in the doorway, watching them. Awkward, hesitant, like a man stepping into unfamiliar light. He cleared his throat. Evan, give us a minute. Evan looked between them, then nodded and wheeled himself to his room. Lena stood, crossing her arms. You really don't know how to talk to people, do you? Charles sighed. I spent my whole life talking to people, just not listening. She studied him. So why me? Because you looked at my son and saw what I didn't. Silence stretched between them. Then Charles said, I'm hosting another gala next month for inclusion and accessibility. I want you there. As what? She asked. As the face of the campaign. Lena laughed. You're serious? Completely. You think hiring me again will erase what you did? He shook his head. No, but maybe it can show Evan that people can change. She hesitated. The old anger still burned, but beneath it something else flickered. Possibility. She finally said, If I do this, it's not for you. I know, he said. It's for him. That night, Lena walked home under the city lights, replaying his words. Change, redemption, trust. Big words from a man who built his life on appearances. But as she passed a shop window, she caught her reflection and saw something new. For the first time since the humiliation, she didn't look small, she looked seen. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Charles watched the same viral video again, but this time he didn't turn it off. He watched his son's smile, her kindness, and his own cruelty reflected back. He whispered to himself, almost a confession, maybe the richest thing I ever owned was her grace. The ballroom glowed again, chandeliers, champagne, a sea of glittering arrogance. Same hotel, same people, but this time something felt different. The whispers began the moment Lena stepped in. No uniform, no tray. She wasn't there to serve. She was there to speak. Charles Whitmore stood at the center of the room, rehearsing his smile. Cameras flashed. PR teams hovered. The Whitmore Inclusion Gala, his redemption story, neatly packaged for headlines. But somewhere behind those polished speeches, guilt still lived in his eyes. Lena walked in wearing a simple black dress, elegant, unpretentious, powerful in its understatement. The crowd turned. Some whispered, "That's her!" Others just stared. Charles caught sight of her and froze. For a moment, time paused. Then he stepped forward. "You came." "I said I would," she replied. He smiled awkwardly. "You look... Let's not do compliments," she cut him off. "They don't suit this room." He nodded, swallowing the words. The event began. Lights dimmed. A massive screen flickered behind the stage. Clips of acts of kindness, edited montages, smiling faces, scripted hope. Charles walked up to the microphone. His voice echoed through the hall. Tonight is about second chances, a beat, about learning from mistakes and turning shame into strength. Polite applause followed. The kind you hear when people clap because they're supposed to. Lena stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching. He continued, and none of this would exist if not for one person, someone who taught me through a single act what real grace looks like. The spotlight swung toward her. Lena's chest tightened. Dozens of cameras turned. Charles extended his hand. "Lena Thompson, please join me." She hesitated, then walked toward him, every step slow, deliberate. The same path she'd once walked to hand him a glass of champagne. The night he'd humiliated her, but this time she wasn't shaking. He smiled as she reached the stage. "Lena showed me that kindness can be power." She looked at him. Then, without warning, took the microphone. "Funny," she said, her voice calm, "that it took a camera for you to notice it." The room went dead silent. Charles blinked. "Excuse me?" She turned to the audience. "You all saw that video, didn't you? The one where a billionaire fired a waitress for letting his disabled son dance?" Murmurs rippled across the hall. "I didn't plan to go viral," she said. "I just didn't think a child's happiness should come with a price tag." Charles stepped forward. "Lena," she raised a hand. "Don't. Let me finish." The cameras were still rolling. "I was humiliated that night," she continued, voice trembling but steady. "Not because I lost my job, but because I saw how small power can make people." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "I thought I'd never walk into a room like this again. But here I am, not as a servant, not as a victim, but as a reminder that respect shouldn't depend on your paycheck." Someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the applause grew louder, raw, real, not polite this time. Charles stood frozen. His redemption speech was unraveling in real time, replaced by something far more authentic. Lena turned to him. "You wanted to use this night to fix your image, but maybe it's time you fixed your heart." The words hit harder than any headline. Charles lowered his gaze. For the first time, he didn't fight back. In the corner of the room, Evan sat in his wheelchair, eyes wide, smiling through tears. He started clapping, louder than anyone. That broke the tension. Charles looked at his son, really looked, and in that moment, something inside him cracked open. He walked toward Lena slowly, took the microphone back and said quietly, "She's right." The room fell silent again. "I built towers, companies, a name that meant power. But I never built a soul that understood people." He paused. "That night, I fired her for kindness. And tonight, she's teaching me what leadership actually means." His voice shook. "I can't erase what I did, but I can start by stepping down." Gasps filled the room. Lena's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Charles looked out over the crowd. "From today, Evan will lead the Whitmore Foundation, with Lena as his partner." The room erupted. Shock, applause, disbelief. Lena turned to him. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said softly, "but it's the first thing I've ever done for the right reason." Later, after the lights dimmed and the cameras were gone, Lena stood outside on the balcony overlooking the city. Charles joined her quietly. "You stole my spotlight," he joked weakly. She smirked. "You never deserved it." He laughed, genuine this time. "Fair enough." They stood in silence for a while, city lights flickering like memories. Then Charles said, "When Evan was born, the doctors told me he'd never walk. I made peace with that, but I also stopped letting him live." Lena glanced at him. "And he just wanted to dance," he nodded. "He just wanted to dance." Evan rolled onto the balcony, smiling. "You two done being dramatic?" Lena laughed. "Never," he grinned. "Good, because we're trending again." She looked at him surprised. "What now?" He turned his phone toward her, a live stream clip already going viral. Waitress takes back her stage and makes Billionaire step down live. Charles groaned. Of course, Evan smiled. Guess the internet still loves a good twist, Lena chuckled softly. Then maybe the world isn't as broken as we think. As the three of them stood there, Billionaire, Waitress, and a boy who just wanted to dance, the wind carried a strange kind of peace. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. It happens in a ballroom, under bright lights, when someone finally stands tall and refuses to bow again. Lena looked out over the city and whispered, maybe dignity doesn't need power, just courage.